So what we'll do then is we'll go on to the next item on the agenda, which is a presentation by Paul Batowski, and then I'll open it up for other citizen comments on a resolution that'll be coming forward. And I'm going to, that resolution is on the agenda, it's the first thing on the agenda, so we'll have 2 periods of public comment. That's what I wanted to mention. With that, we're going to go ahead with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, which is on the stage behind most of you. I pledge my allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I'll just open the agenda to citizen comments for issues not related to the resolution inviting Senator Cal forward to the Urban Renewal Agency and not related to the Senator Cal project at the landfill site. Are there any citizen comments on any other topic? Have we received any that you know of at this point? Okay, do you want to call them forward then?
This is for general citizen comments. First is Amber Holbeck and then Rob Crocker.
Thank you. Oh, am I on?
No, I see if you get a light on there.
Push.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Mayor Neely, no?
No? We're not, she's
Hello?
not being...
There I am.
There you go.
Mayor Neely and City Commissioners, I'm Amber Holbeck. I represent the Oregon City Chamber of Commerce and live just outside of city limits. This evening, I'm just sharing with you input from the Oregon City Chamber of Commerce regarding one of your consent agenda items, Resolution 11-02, adopting new parking meter and parking permit fees. As you know, there have been a great number of changes in our downtown, and along with this, there are changes in traffic patterns that are going to be coming down the pike. You know, we're dealing with the closure of the Arch Bridge, a number of different issues. And there have been tremendous efforts made through the Main Street Oregon City nonprofit, our downtown manager Lloyd Purdy, city engineer Nancy Krushauer, and countless many other people that are trying to make some positive changes downtown. At the request of Mayor Neely, our Chamber's Government and Economic Affairs Committee did review the proposed restructuring of our downtown Oregon City parking meter fees and permit parking fees, and we definitely appreciate the need to prevent pricing the public out of shopping downtown while we're experiencing other changes in our downtown. However, we do believe that it's important to align with what our other downtown businesses are telling us, and so the Oregon City Chamber Board of Directors agrees with the recommendation. We believe that these reasonable fee increases should help to change downtown parking behavior, and so we do support that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Crocker.
She had an extra minute and 15 seconds. Can I take that?
No, you ran over during the Urban Renewal Commission. I saw your light was red, so you're at a deficit, actually.
I'm Rob Crocker. I'm a small business and a property owner on Main Street, Oregon City. I took my sticker off because I'm not here for or against the rivers. I'm going to place that over here because I have no interest in that right now. My interest is solely in Main Street, Oregon City. It's in the downtown core. I love that place. I've already told you I'm all in downtown. In all the hubbub about everything that's going on with the bridge, with the rivers, with the two-way traffic, with everything that's going on, I want us to make sure that we keep on the forefront of our minds, as hard as it will be, the fact that we have an awesome Main Street program. We have amazing momentum right now. We've made some incredible strides in Main Street. If you look at it now compared to 5 years ago, we've made some tremendous strides. We have some amazing results. We have amazing volunteers. And we have an ultra, super, uber amazing Main Street manager. We don't know how lucky we are to have Lloyd Purdy as our Main Street manager. We really don't. We are very, very fortunate. And I'm afraid we're not going to know what we have until it's gone. And we have a serious crisis ahead of us in regards to funding for Main Street. We got basically 2 years of funding from the city and from the county to keep this thing going, and we've proven results. And I think I'm not here to ask for anything specific, but I want to make sure we keep this on the forefront of the discussion, because if we don't do something soon, our funding runs out in March, and we may lose that. And I really don't want to let history repeat itself. There were some things started in the early and mid '80s, and they lost momentum, and the downtown regressed. I don't want that to happen again. I really want to see this momentum continue, and I think all of you commissioners do as well. So I'm here just to plead with you, with everything else that's going on, please at least think about Main Street and how we can keep this thing running. Thank you very much, and I'm a minute early.
Thank you.
Dan Holliday.
Dan Holliday, Oregon City, and nothing about the rivers now. So two things. One, I wanted to let everybody know that we have 6 kids from our JROTC unit at the high school that arrived in Camp Perry, Ohio this morning to participate in the Army National Marksmanship Championships. And so let's keep everybody in their thoughts as far as that's concerned. And today, in one of my other roles, we submitted 7,792 signatures to the county clerk to allow folks to vote on the funding mechanism for the Selwood Bridge. So I do believe in folks having an opportunity to vote on some things. But anyway, that's all I have to say.
Were there any others? Is there anything, we're going to pull one item from the consent agenda. Could you remind me what that was, please?
Item 8F, the minutes of February 2nd, there was a change.
There was a change in that. And are there any other items that you wish to be pulled from the consent agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to pull item 8B on our rules of procedure.
8B. Any others? Hearing none. Given that, shall we proceed with the agenda as otherwise listed? Okay. Going into general business, we have. I'm getting ahead of myself. Actually, we do have a presentation to be made by Tom Potowski, the Oregon State economist, and invite him forward, please, and to make your presentation. Thank you for coming out. I appreciate it.
Okay, I'll try to stand and face you rather than you watch my backs. I'm afraid tonight I don't have anything as controversial or interesting as what you've been dealing with. But I will say it is really warms your heart to see the passion you have on issues. Just wonderful. Anyways, I'm the state economist. Usually when I tell people that, they say they didn't realize the state had one. But there is one, and I have a PowerPoint, and what I'll try to do is go relatively quickly through this, put you back on schedule, because I think I've got good information to give you, but you've got important stuff to do, given your passion. Okay, going to talk a little bit about. Oh, thank you so much. Much better. It's on. Oh, great. Thank you so much. I like to walk around. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about the U.S. economy, because we're really independent thinkers here in Oregon, but like it or not, what happens nationally, internationally affects us right here in Oregon, affects you right here in Oregon City, too. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, what's happening in the U.S. economy, because that's going to flow into what happens here in Oregon. And one of the things to keep in mind, we went through a very tremendous financial crisis, which could have tipped us over to a depression situation. We're getting through that, but history has shown us that coming out of these recessions that are caused by financial collapse, the economy takes a long time to recover. And really, this is playing by the script, by the books right now. This has been a very long period coming out. And I'll have more to say about that and what that means for Oregon. We had a lot of fiscal stimulus out there before. We also had what we call the inventory cycle. Businesses ran their inventories down to almost nothing. They had to kind of build them back up, and that kind of boosted us in the first part of 2010. Then that cycle was kind of over, and the federal stimulus, the biggest punch of those, were also starting to wane. So what did we do? Well, the federal government has two insurance cards that it played, basically extending the Bush-era tax cuts and bonus depreciation that occurred. And also, the Federal Reserve has what's called quantitative easing part 2. And they say they're going to go with their $600 billion package through mid this year. So that's kind of a little insurance policy to try to keep the recovery still going. And the whole idea is that you've got this economic engine, and it's sputtering. They put the cables to it, give some charge. And what you hope is that once you take those cables off, the engine runs on its own. And so it's been a little scary so far about whether this engine is going to run on its own. It's been sputtering now since the recession basically ended in 2009. It just sure doesn't feel like it. And it's only now we're starting to see the seeds of recovery happening. Consumers are starting to wake up a little bit. Nobody can spend like Americans. No one in the world. And we're finally living up to that billing that we see with the Cash for Clunkers, the first-time credit for home buyers. You give people deals, they come out. And I think what probably a lot of businesses that I've talked to now are seeing is that not only are people willing to spend, but it's got to be a deal. And it's not just negotiations. They think it's a right that they get a deal or a discount. And so that's something new I think businesses are going to have to get working through if they're going to get customers back again. Employment, very tentative pace, but it's starting to pick up just a little bit, very slow still. And then tax revenues, they're increasing at the federal level just because economic activity is starting to pick up. But the federal government doesn't have to worry about collecting taxes. If they want to spend more, they take in taxes, they borrow from us. They deficit spend. State and local governments don't have that luxury. And so they tend to be latecomers to recessions, and so we're going to see some cutting happening really in the budget periods coming up. The state legislatures now are working on a new budget. Local governments, I'm sure here you've probably had some very tough decisions to make, possibly some local teachers having to be laid off. It's a story throughout the state, throughout the U.S. And I'll come back to that a little bit as one of the risks to this recovery. Thank you. Let's go beyond this one. Let's tab. I'm just going to finish up with the U.S. Next one, and then we'll go into this one. Okay, bottom line, what we see the U.S. economy, that's going to flow into the Oregon. This sort of what I call recovery recession. It's in its second year. Job growth finally starting to come up, but we're really at some high unemployment rates for the U.S. and, of course, also for Oregon. Next. Credit markets. They're starting to come back. But right now, it's not the time period where, just a few months ago, no, I shouldn't say a few months ago, more like 2007, 2006, if you were an axe murderer, you could still get a mortgage. There was no problem. And now we've gone to the ridiculous position where if you're to get a house mortgage, you actually have to show today a source of income. It's come to that.
How sad.
But that pendulum has swung such that now you have to be so creditworthy just to get loans. And that sort of slowdown of credit availability slows the economy down. Because credit is the one item that is common to all markets, right? It's the communication, actually, between markets. So what we have here is there's a continuum of credit availability that's starting to open up. The place that it's most available, if you're a business, you're flush with cash, you don't need to borrow, you can get credit if you need it. Of course, you don't need it, but they're very willing to lend to you because you're so credit worthy. And then you come down the continuum, and in the bottom, unfortunately, the pile here is who cannot get credit, and this is true also in Oregon. It's residential, right, home building, and it's real estate, commercial. Those are the two places that credit's probably going to be the last part where it's going to start loosening up. And because of that, we should not expect commercial real estate or residential housing to be one of the strengths pulling us out of recession and strengths in the recovery. They're going to be one of the last things to come up. Next. Housing market's going to continue to be fragile in the U.S. I think prices will still come down a little bit, but they're not going to come down as fast as they did before. But we're actually seeing a bottom being reached. Next. Inflation. Now, a lot of economists say that inflation is basically not a threat today. They don't even think it possibly is a threat next year. Of course, a lot of people ask, do economists buy gasoline and go to the grocery store? Because if they did, maybe they'd have a different story to tell. Because they'd actually see some of these prices going up. I was shocked the other day with iceberg lettuce, $2.40 a pound. I was wondering if there was a futures market there. I was going to invest. I was actually in the Midwest just recently at a restaurant, and on the menu, just under lobster, was corn on the cob, market price. No, it wasn't, of course. I'm telling you, corn is going up very high. But the problem is that we're seeing all these commodity prices going up, and the fear is, does that translate into all other prices starting to go up? And if that happens, what do we do about it? Now, my view is somewhat more to the economists. I don't think overall inflation is a threat today. It becomes a little bit more of a threat next year. But I think for this year, we're okay. Part of it is that what is the ability for producers to pass on these commodity prices in the final goods and services that households buy? If households are still struggling, they're not seeing their wages and incomes going up very much, you can't all of a sudden have prices going up. All that happens then is that people can't buy those things. You have another slowdown in the economy. And that's the worry for me. If they do pass it on, well, it's probably not going to be sustainable. The only reason is because we're going to slip back into recession period. So I think it's very tough for them to pass it on. So as long as that happens, I think we should be able to dodge this somewhat. In that what we call a relative price increase for commodities, not an overall all prices going up. Think about 2008, what happened there. You had commodity prices, gasoline prices really high. It didn't translate into overall inflation. Of course, what also kept it from going is that we started to slip into recession. Okay, finally, we're doing better. Definitely, I think the economy is now getting some legs to it. We're starting to see some job growth. I think the probability of a double-dip recession and falling back into recession, that chances are becoming less and less as we're going forward. So I think the recovery is well in place, but it's a slow recovery. Next. All right, now that feeds into Oregon. Next. Some recent facts for Oregon. 10.6% unemployment rate for December 2010. March 1st, we actually get the January numbers. They're a little later this year. But it's been stuck at about 10.6% for the last 14 months. Pretty bad news. Next. 26th fastest growth rate of all the states, which is pretty good. We were in the 40th position just a few months ago. So we're starting to pick up a little there. Go ahead. Total non-farm employment. Not much of an increase, only 0.67%. Now this is year over year, so it's trying to show that it's not just for the most recent quarter, but now for a whole year we're at least getting some positive job growth. And this is the first year over year positive since the first quarter of 2008. So it's been some while before we've seen these nicer numbers. Next. Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. These are seasonally adjusted job gains. We nerds that are data wonks, use seasonally adjusted stuff all the time. But that's important to use it because in December, employment always goes up because it's holiday season. You wouldn't want to think we were all of a sudden in recovery, right? Because all of a sudden then you'd be fooled by January because employment falls back down again after the holiday's over. Personal income growth is doing better. Next. And then exports. Exports have been one of our bright spots. really has jumped up here 20.5% in the first 11 months of 2010 compared to the same period last year. And we're almost back to the same level of exports that we were before the recession hit. Part of that is because the trading partners that Oregon's involved in, the Pacific Rim, has done relatively better through the financial crisis, and the value of the U.S. dollar makes our goods look cheaper overseas. Okay, view of Oregon here. You can see the Multnomah County area, 9.2%. The highest unemployment rates are in areas that had the biggest housing booms or are wood product related, which makes sense because that's where the depths of the recession hit. Next, please. But this is, I'm trying to, by the way, I want to get a happy picture. I've been giving such sad presentations for so long. It's finally nice to see some more positive numbers coming forward. And temp workers are some of the first to be hired back. You know, if you think about it, you've worked down your workforce to a skeletal group if you're still in business. And then finally, you start to see sales doing a little better. So you take that skeletal crew and you say, hey, I was working you only, 30 hours a week. Let's try to go to 40. And then let's do a little overtime. And then you got to add some temp workers. One of the last things businesses tend to do, because they really want to make sure that what they see is true, that there's a recovery and things are better, the last is going to be permanent employees that they hire. And we're finally, I think, starting to move towards that position. But this is good news that these temporary workers are going up. Yes. Let's take a quick look at Oregon City. Oregon City, your population growth, these were tough years for you people. And this really does correspond to the drop in the wood products industry as sort of the dominant industry in the state. Hardly any change in employment over a 10-year period in Oregon City. And then you had quite the burst of growth in the 1990s, and still not bad going into 2010. Next. This gives a little perspective relative to Clackamas County and then Oregon City. You can see that you were responsible, basically, for a lot of the overall growth that happened in the entire county of Clackamas. Wow. Next.
That's interesting.
This is educational attainment. Your educational attainment in terms of your population with bachelor's degree or higher is a little bit lower than the state average and a little bit lower for Clackamas County. Next. But the percent in the labor force, you're definitely a more working group here. 68.8% of your population is in the labor force, and that is higher than definitely the Oregon average. Next. Your median household income, better than the Oregon average, not quite as high as overall for Clackamas County. Next. And this gives you a certain sense of percent of population by place of birth. Notice that this is U.S. born, 94%. Are U.S. born. Oregon born, 59%. So you kind of grow your own here rather than import a lot of people. All right? And then foreign born, only 6% compared to 10 for the average for Oregon. And I think really the story then, maybe to sum it all up, if we look inside Clackamas County in Oregon City, you just have to come to the conclusion that definitely Oregon City is better than Lake Oswego. All right, next please. All right, so our economic outlook. This is still history, but what we want to show you is the kind of expansion periods that we've had. Now, what this means here is that we've peaked employment, we lost employment, we started to come out, and you returned to peak. So you got back to the same employment you had just before the recession. And then you added jobs on top of that peak. And then you have another recession. Notice this one much longer in terms of getting back to the same peak. And then a shorter expansion period, not as long as the 1990s. And then quite a large drop. The scary part about this graph, if we look here at first quarter 2010, and I go back to about the first quarter of 2000, that means the same level of employment. We have the same numbers that we had 10 years ago we have basically today. And think about what's happened statewide, exactly. But think about what's happened. Population growth has occurred in that time, and we haven't been able to assimilate all these people into the working employment area. Next. Now, I put this graph up. It's not really a diagram of my house, but I have to show you that I'm an economist, and economists have to show at least one graph that nobody can understand. And this is my graph. So there's a big mess up here. And remember, we were showing before about that other graph said, look, you have a peak, you lost jobs and got to the same peak. Well, that's exactly what this concentrates on. All the past recessions, where here you started off at the peak, you lose jobs, and then you gain jobs and you return to the same peak. And how long does that take to happen? So, you can see the granddaddy for us really since the Great Depression. In the U.S., they've called this recession the Great Recession. For Oregon, our Great Recession was really the early 80s. And that's this blue line here, where we dropped much more in percentage terms than we did before. And it took a lot longer to get out. But we think this one's going to be fairly similar in terms of the amount of time it takes to come out of this thing. And that means we're over here about 80, 84 months. If the recession started at the very beginning of 2008, we're looking towards the end of 2014 just to get back to the employment that we had. Okay, next. We build our own economic leading indicator model, very similar to the U.S. And you can see that when the red line comes down, this is employment growth, also comes down. But the red line, we had that soft patch in the sort of middle of 2010, and our indicator saw that that was coming, but now it's positive again and coming back up. And I think that's a very good sign that we should start to see the employment growth coming too. Next, please. This is our outlook for overall employment. You can see that we had these 3 tough years through here. We have about a 1.4% growth this year. We think every quarter in 2011 is going to be positive growth, but relatively mild. You can see these big spikes over here when we started to come out. We don't think we're going to get those same kind of spikes this time. There's no real industry out there that says it's going to shoot up like a rocket and pull the other sectors with it. So it's going to be broad-based recovery, but that essentially means, too, it's going to be relatively slow. Next. This is another complicated graph. I know none of you are into indexes, but these are indexes. And what they basically show is growth. So right about here, let's see, 100, they're equal to each other. And then here, the Oregon is the bottom one, the U.S. is the top one. But you can see that these are fairly fast growth in recovery. And so these are the sectors we think, although in relative terms it's still relatively slow, but of all the sectors, these will probably come back a little bit faster in relative terms. So transportation, warehousing, utilities, health services, professional business services, wholesale trade, those look like they're going to do fairly well through this. Next, please. Now, structural shifts. One that, here the recession hit, and probably not going to look like it did before the recession hit. Things are going to be different for these sectors. And one that you're probably very well aware of is the wood products, where it's been a tough go for quite a while. But our expectation is that Oregon's just not going to pop up like it did before. And in fact, the employment level will come back up. It is going to increase, but it will not return to its previous peak, like some of the other industries will. Transportation equipment, if you're down in the Eugene area, there's, the RV makers are almost all gone. One RV maker did reopen, and we were kind of excited about it until we learned that I think it was 12 employees are running the place. So that's not a really big jump from the previous 400 that used to be at the plant. Okay. And then computer electronics, that also, for Oregon, we do relatively better. That's the top line. The blue is Oregon relative to the U.S. And, of course, we have that great news from Intel that they're going to build a new fab plant here and refurbish 2 other ones. I think more important than that just being a statement about jobs, it's a statement about a first-rate world company still decided that this was a good place to do business. And I think that is the message that we should start to really tell more so than there's going to be, a few hundred more jobs. Next. And then population-driven industries. Oregon tends to have a little faster population growth than the U.S., and it definitely is cyclical. And when things start to pop back up, our population starts to pack up too. And I just don't mean like the show Portlandia. I mean, we're not, going to have a lot of 20-year-olds, and we're going to have the most educated baristas, in the country. But overall, both in terms of retirees, that sort of creative class group, that will continue to increase our population. Next, please. So our unemployment outlook, we're looking at this coming down fairly slow. It's going to be a long, long slog. We in our office don't like to look too much at the unemployment rate, and what I mean by that, it's a good indication sometimes of stress and problems in your economy. We like to look at job growth and whether jobs are falling or jobs are gaining, because there are two different surveys, by the way. The unemployment is a household survey. The employment numbers are an establishment survey. And also, it tends to lag. What tends to happen are people get discouraged when it's a long recession. They drop out. If they don't look for work, they're not counted. And then when starts the news, hey, some jobs are coming, da-da-da, these people come back, they start looking, they get counted as unemployed, the unemployment rate stays up and doesn't come down. So you hear very strange news sometimes where the unemployment rate can even jump up a little bit even though there was a positive job growth number that came out. All right, that's the next one. Some drags, drivers, risks to this growth that we're seeing. This is the housing, and I think this is the number one risk to the Oregon economic recovery. We still don't know to what extent that there are foreclosures out there, how many bad homes basically are on the books of banks. And so there's still some danger that there's going to be more foreclosures, and that's going to bump up the supply of homes that are available in the market, and that's still going to depress the market. The depressing part about this graph, and this I think is just absolutely amazing, we wonks, a number of wonks, love graphs, and we always think they're amazing, whether you do or not. We do. The top here is 1978 through about 1990. And the bottom is 2005 through 2017. So we also have a forecast for these later years. And these are housing starts in Oregon. And the part is that, sometimes you have a left scale and a right scale, and they have different measurements, and all you're doing is putting one graph on top of the other and say, oh, look, the trends are similar. Well, not only are the trends similar, the numbers on both axes are exactly the same. So this is a 27-year difference, and we're at the same housing starts that we were 27 years ago. So that is really depressing. And our view is that it doesn't shoot up. It's going to follow somewhat similar as it did in the early 80s recession. So it's not going to be a sector that's going to pull us out of things. It's going to take a long time to come forward. Next, please. Our exports are really dominating, done very, very well. And I'll just make that statement that it is. We'll go next. Population growth is depending, of course, on your view. If you're one of the people that say, hey, I'm in beautiful Oregon, close the door behind me, then you really don't like population growth. But we've definitely drawn from California. Over time, we have a net out-migration to Washington, and that's been true for many, many, many years. Some people point out and say, well, you passed Measure 66. And you had the tax increase on the high-income people, and they're moving across the river. They've been moving for 20, 25 years. I mean, there's nothing new there. But we are watching that data to see if there is some change occurring there. But California has been definitely our draw of almost 70,000 over this time period. A little bit to Idaho. We also have some net out migration, but all other regions we're positive with in terms of we pull people into the state. That's the problem of having a beautiful place to live. Next. So the risks, and a positive one is that with population gain does come more economic activity. And as the economy starts to get better, we probably will see a little stronger population growth. But it could be stronger than what we're envisioning. Next. Okay, some risks overall. Financial markets, they could come back more quickly. These are positive risks on the top part, that things could be better. We're saying it's a very slow recovery. It could actually be a lot faster if some of these upside risks happen. Financial markets are better. Businesses are fairly optimistic, the ones that I've talked to, much more so than just 6 months ago, which is a good sign. And consumer optimism is starting to pick up. And then global growth. So far, there's some dangers. We have a very strong connection with China, but so far China's been able to avoid its property bubble that seems to be percolating up a little bit. And as long as that stays okay, our exports will be okay, and that will be a plus for us. Downside, as I said before, housing, I think, is the one big downside risk to us that we're uncertain about. Policy mistakes. You know, they've thrown everything in the kitchen sink at this recession, and so does the Federal Reserve, are they going to be able to soak out all that money that's in the system at the right time as the economy starts to recover, so that, because if they don't, we could then truly lead to inflation. If they soak it out too soon, they could choke off recovery. So it's a real tough game to play here, and they got to do it just right. And then, as I mentioned before, the commodity prices and inflation in emerging markets are also a possible risk we need to look at. Okay, so the bottom line for us, the technical recession in Oregon probably ended in late 2009. The jobless recovery sort of took hold, but I think we're finally getting out of that jobless recovery part where you get a month of some job gains, the next month you get job losses, and almost nothing, just sort of bouncing on the bottom, sort of bottom fishing along. That's starting to turn around. Job losses did continue third quarter, but the fourth quarter showed some good gains. The most important part, it wasn't just one sector that we had the job gains. It was pretty much across the sectors, which is the good news. House prices in Oregon, I think they will decline, but not as fast as they did before. And once again, it's a geographic situation. For example, in the Portland area, the more central city you are, and that may be true here, the prices are probably stabilizing, maybe even ticking up a little bit. The more you go to the suburbs, the more the land was available, the more overbuilding there was. That's going to take a little longer for it to go up. You know, Bend is still going to experience some price decreases just because of the situation that they had. But the bottom does seem to be here on the housing. So housing's not going to lead the recovery. Professional business services should be up. Healthcare services, one of the few sectors that actually added jobs through the recession, along with food processing. The only two sectors. Computer electronic, I think, and then retail, I think, is also going to be doing well. Okay, so we're coming out of the rapids. This is my office's website. We have a blog. We don't put what we had for breakfast on Twitter. We actually put some, good news there, useful news. So I can take some questions if there's some time.
Are there any questions? Anybody?
Yes.
Regarding the kids in the school district, our population is growing, but the school district says losing kids. Those middle districts that they have a house out there, and they might have to meet with a private school. What's the deal? Why do you think Oregon City is losing kids for our population?
Well, yes, I'll repeat the question. That'll give me time to think for an answer. The question is, why is it that Oregon City seems to be losing children? Or at least the child population.
We're not losing children.
Yeah, I wouldn't live here either if I thought there were losing children. So why is it that the school-age population is declining? But overall, population seems to be going up. And it is, what we're seeing is just a demographic, an age structure. You've had the baby boomers, the baby boomers have had their kids, and you've got kind of a little lull that, in that age group. It's going to pick back up a little bit, but not like it did before. So you're in a kind of a period right now where it's just the age structure of the people that live here and who had kids and when they had them. You're hitting just kind of a soft period right now with that. Yes, sir.
On the previous slide, were you actually projecting that there could be an increase in retail trade?
Was I actually saying that in that last slide that there could be an increase in retail trade? And yes, I think there is going to be an increase in retail trade. We're already seeing it, at least in some of the employment numbers in retail. But it's a tough game right now to project these things with the internet and with internet sales. And I've been advocating, because I love data, And I would have a much better idea of what's happening on retail if we had a sales tax. Maybe a bad reason for having one. Just 0.1 of a cent. That's all, just so I could get the data.
Can you explain, everybody
No.
really, can you explain how a large construction project, and I'm not just talking about the rivers or, D1B or whatever it is, but how a large construction project affects jobs across the region?
Okay, the question is, how does a large construction job affect jobs across the region and the state? Well, for one, and we looked a little bit closer into this because one of the biggest construction jobs that's going to be occurring is out in Ronler Acres with Intel. And what you have is there's a couple of effects. One we call the direct effect. And the direct effect is, okay, I'm going to do this construction. I'm going to hire construction people on this job. Then you have the indirect effects. Well, okay, what do construction people need? They're also going to need, then this construction job is going to need supplies. It's going to need, tools. Well, all these things are supplied by other businesses for that construction job. So that may, in fact, their employment may going up. And then the third one is called induced. Well, all these people get incomes and so on. What do they do with it? Well, they spend it. And that then gets spent around in the region, and that can create jobs. So so it can get spread out more than just right where something's being built.
I'm going to interrupt you for just 1 minute. To Mayor Neely, BMW station wagon 416 EYR. Your lights have been on for an hour, and then somebody signed it with a happy face. But in any case, if that is your vehicle, you might want to go and that again. It's a BMW station wagon 416 EYR.
Yeah, that's mine. Right.
Yes, Nick?
There's a lot of debate about what the best kind of jobs are to attract. And at the commission meeting a couple weeks ago, we heard a lot of testimony from people who welcome entry-level jobs so that young kids could learn job skills. Even so, unemployed people or unemployed retirees can go back to work. A lot of debate about family wage jobs. I really don't know what those are, but I'd like to. From your perspective, the knowledge of Oregon City, how should we be trying to attract jobs? What kinds of jobs, what kinds of industries might go well here, might not come here because we don't have a critical mass of trained people in those industries, things like that.
Okay, were you able to hear that?
If you could repeat it, a summary for the web, anyway, for our filming.
Is that what I did? Sorry. I don't know Oregon City. I mean, I'd be foolish to say that I did. In a broad sense, a lot of cities have tried to reinvent themselves. And you probably have heard about the garden economy. A person out of Littleton, Colorado, is talking about, you have to sort of grow your own businesses first. And it's very similar to the idea that you have some certain core competencies. And can you leverage those to your advantage? And that might be where you put your bucks at, rather than what I call sometimes the field of dreams, which are business parks where, build and they will come. If that was true, Wyoming would have every business in the world. But it's a tough one to answer, Nick. Of what exactly to do. So what I would say is you look into yourselves and what do we do good, and can we leverage that somehow? Yes.
And it said that the breakdown across the U.S. Is that among people who have bachelor's degrees or It's only 4.5%, 4.6% unemployment up below level. Unemployment for people with high school degrees is low, 15%. Teenagers, 22 point change, that's another low. Is that true for Oregon? Do you want to make that?
Generally, yes. When you take a look at who is unemployed, and you take a look at what are their socioeconomic characteristics of the group that's unemployed, generally those that have the higher education have the lower unemployment rate. They also have generally the higher average incomes than other groups. So yes, I'd say yes, even in Oregon, that's generally true. And I appreciate you not asking me anything about the rivers. Okay.
Mr. Potowski,
I can. Well, you've got them. Yes.
Mr. Potowski, thank you very much. I'm just going to ask if there are any specific questions from the commission itself. Hearing none, I just wanted to ask you one favor. I don't know if you're invited to speak at Lake Oswego. We'd like a video stream of that to make sure that you gave Oregon City the same credit if you were talking to a Lake Oswego audience.
Well, you probably can guess I don't live in Lake Oswego.
What about West Lynn?
Well, actually, one of my staff lives in West Lynn and actually operates the Baskin & Robbins that's just out here. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Very cool.
That was great.
Now we're going to go into our public hearings, general business, and A has to do with a resolution that was being put forward for the submittal for the development and disposition agreement from Cal Central going to the Urban Renewal Agency. When we had, actually, I'd put citizens' comments first. I got out of order. So I messed up, but I got it corrected. I think there's going to be a move to pull that resolution. Probably most of you know why, because the Urban Renewal Agency itself made the request for Central Cal to come forward with its development agreement. However, there may be some of you here that wanted to actually talk about aspects of this resolution, and so we're going to open up again for citizen comments to discuss this particular item before we take a motion from the floor, not from the floor, but from the commission on whether we pull that item. Is there anybody that wishes to speak to this particular item? We do have people that have listed, and I'll let our city recorder call them out. I'm going to make a simple request. Do we have many that have? 5. So some of the scripted dialogue here that I have won't apply, but the request is still going to be the same. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes, and please refrain from clapping and from making any other vocal or other indications of support or opposition to them. We'd like to hear all opinions, and with that, we'll go ahead and proceed with the citizens' comments dealing with the resolution that is before us.
Would the following people please come forward to the waiting area? Patrick Carson, Derek Beneville, Dave Prideaux, William Gifford, and Jim Patrick. And if there's any others that have not signed up, you can come at this time too.
And the first two on that list?
Carson and Derek Beneville step forward to the table.
Mr. Bendel? Or were you, excuse me.
First on the list.
Introduce yourself by name and what city you live in.
My name's Patrick Carson. I live in Oregon City, just down the street. Thank you, Mayor and council people, for this time today. I've written down some thoughts that I have about the proposed rivers development. After all of the Rivers project construction crews and related have packed up and gone on, wages and benefits paid up, Oregon City will then face the prospect of a destination shopping mall on the landfill dump area right off the interstate. Easy off, easy on. Drive-by recreational shopping, this brought to Oregon City by conglomerates of out-of-state corporate behemoths who are fed on the breast milk of millions of public urban renewal dollars, taxpayer-funded, or they won't come to town. Minimum wage and part-time work with little or no benefit packages. Speak to our owners in those other states, they'll say to us, and all of this chased by millions of dollars of public, taxpayer-financed urban renewal monies. Long-range living wage jobs, we pissed them away on non-local out-of-state. Bring in a corporate megalomart to displace Fisherman's Marine and Outdoor, which is a local, regional, family-owned business who took no public funds when they opened up in our wonderful city. Cabela's Outdoor and other corporate out-of-towners, out-of-staters don't really have a stake in Oregon City like we do. Their kids go to school where they live, way over there. Urban renewal is about renewing our built environments, and these monies should not be used to finance new private development. Renewal does not mean new. It does mean working with what we have to renew our communities. Cabela's Outdoor will put 16 cents of every dollar into the local economy, and the remainder will leave Oregon City and be wired immediately to their corporate headquarters in Sidney, Nebraska. This proposed development is not in the long-term interests of our community. The taxpayers should not have to finance destination recreational shopping. Part of our problems are the result of too much conspicuous consumption and rampant commercialism. We are foolish to think that we can shop our way out of our very real local and global dilemmas. We've been doing this for too long, and it just gets us in deeper and deeper. Repeating the same dysfunctional behavior and expecting a different result is not what healthy urban renewal is about. Keep Oregon City strong. Let us use our public dollars to support local, sustainably smart growth that will in turn support long-term living wage jobs, neighborhoods, etc., etc. Let's keep our millions of public urban renewal dollars local control. Let's work together for the common good. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bendel.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Derek Benbell. I live here in Oregon City. I'd like to commend all of you for this wonderful public process. It's been wonderful the last couple meetings and this one as well. In fact, I think the last urban renewal meeting, we had 50-50 speakers for and against, and I thought that was unbelievable. One thing I was disappointed was the agenda of the urban renewal meeting, and that you had one speaker that was really lopsided to one side and really didn't have another speaker on the other side. So I was a little disappointed in that. In regards to this resolution, the question shouldn't be if we should. Of course we should. The river project's been around for years. We've been talking about this for years with Senator Cowell, and they've spent over $7 million, and he ultimately gave up. This is our second chance to start working with them, and this is his opportunity to go based on this resolution. I was also kind of disturbed on the last meeting about, well, we should sit back and kind of look at our options. That's what we've been doing for years. If there was other good options, we would hear them by now. I mean, this is a garbage dump. I mean, and it's not only that, it's private land. It's not even public land. And ultimately, he's trying to develop it based on our own master plan. We need to make that process go forward. And then again, I need to clarify this gentleman next to me about educating about urban renewal and the use of tax dollars. It isn't about new taxes coming out of our pocket. It's about that district within that urban renewal and the use of that property tax and how it's appropriated. I mean, the money that's proposed, the $17 million, is actually being used for the right purpose of the definition of urban renewal, which is to improve blighted land. It's a garbage dump. That's what a blighted land is. That's what the use of urban renewal money's for. What makes this one a little bit more interesting and exciting is that he's not even proposing that we even use $17 million of that urban renewal money until it's actually generated, when it's actually 80% developed. And that could take some time. Right now, that garbage dump is not providing any property tax for the urban renewal district, for our city, our schools, our state, ever. So it's money that we don't even have now. Let's get it. Then we can use it for use. And then we'll develop that development like the Bridgeport and all those other places and rejuvenate the existing businesses around here. And I really encourage you to sit down with them. The other thing that I want to mention is that there was a great article on the Oregon Trails today by an unknown author that says it's not about should, it's about sitting down with a developer that has the right idea and making sure it works for the city, making sure that you think out proper parking, that it's people-friendly, that the traffic logistics is proper, that it's done well and thought out well so that it can be successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please. No, not you, but they applaud.
Dave Prideaux, William Gifford, please. Next will be Jim Patrick and James Lee Hamilton.
Mr. Hamilton, would you want to step forward too? Yeah. Mr. Prideaux?
Dave Prideaux, Oregon City. I'd like to start off with a question. Why are the Pro Rivers people so afraid to put this out to a public vote? And I'd like to speak to a possible answer to that. I've heard things and read things in the newspaper and so on, but I'm going to start with the previous administration. One remaining member here did vote to up that urban renewal bond indebtedness ceiling up past $100 million. I believe it was 130, something like that. And since then, I feel like that the city leaders have basically pushed aside what the people might think and tried to push this through. And it was, I believe, in spring of '08 when the Beaver Creek Annex vote took place. It went down by 2-1 against that. I think Park Place also was rejected at that time as an annexation. I think that was voted on a couple more times in November and in the spring of '09. I believe the vote was 60% to 40% against the Park Place annexation at that time. And in October of '08, I was looking at the postings on the internet today, and one of the citizens, I believe, said, I think it's time to vote the incumbents out and put some commissioners in there that actually have an understanding of the Oregon City taxpayer. Out with the old, Damon Mabey and Tidwell, and in with the new, Jim Nocita and Rocky Smith or Phil Yates. That was written by Gracie Smith. I basically feel like the answer to my question is that what part of no don't you understand? And so I think the reason that people don't want to put this out to a public vote is because the public has spoken. When the average person that may not show up here, may not be vocal, may not have the buttons, has a chance to go on the ballot and vote. You've heard what the results have been. We have an entirely, basically, new commission. And I think it's a result of what the people of Oregon City want. And so my answer is, I think the reason that those who are in favor of the rivers are afraid to go out for a public vote is because I think you know what the vote might likely be. And I appreciate you listening to my political opinions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is James Hamilton. I live at 224 Center Street here in Oregon City, Oregon, and actually ran for mayor last year, which gave me a lot of privilege to a lot of information. But I don't want to go over the statistics and the numbers. I, for myself, have spent a lifetime in business, ran 17 corporations, outreaches, and most of them non-for-profits. My family's been in the business since the early 40s. We always took a risk on our own selves when we went and developed something. We wound up selling it off for millions later on. But you know what? We took the risk. And I think that's the entrepreneurial wisdom of our community, and that's what we're all based upon. We all took risks to get to where we're at. We have a developer here who wants to go out and develop, but he wants some help. I would like to have some help anytime I built any of my corporations. But sadly, there was nobody there. And when I failed or went bankrupt, the 50 or 60 or whatever employees went out the door. When I was running for election, this was only 348 jobs because I publicly said I'd like to take that 348 opportunities and turn it into 348 independent husband and wife teams, incubate them with that same amount of thrust, if you would, and start to provide jobs right here in Oregon City, Oregon. To make it short, this is not going to benefit Oregon City, Oregon, if we're having to put out money. If the developer and the property owner want to get together and do something and leave us out of it, then maybe we should set some boundaries and allow that happen. I'm kind of suggesting at this point that we put a committee for the city together, the purpose to establish a committee of the citizens for the citizens. The purpose is to bring forth all evidence in the next 60 days for presentation to the citizens once and for all the mud, all the dirt, everything. And we, the common people, need to avoid the enormous risk of a site development with the ability to harbor sickness just under the surface. Sure, we're going to cap all this possible toxicity underneath of it, but the reality is it's still going to get in our water systems, into our rivers and everything else. Maybe there's something we should look at just one more time. It's not 1,500 jobs, people. It was only 348 jobs. Most of this is going to be union jobs, out of state, going to come here. Then they're going to leave. If these were corporations from Oregon, I probably wouldn't even be standing here. If this was local developers in our own city, I wouldn't be standing here. But this money's going to other places. I don't have anything else to say. In all reality, I think we need to take one more look at this thing, make a real conscious, determined decision whether the city should put their money behind it, which is the citizens themselves. I want to stand on Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution of Oregon, and that states the powers inherent in these people back here to make the decision. So, I'm finished.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shalom.
William Gifford and Jim Patrick.
Good evening again, Commissioners. My name is William Gifford, and I live in Oregon City. I wasn't going to say anything, but I put my name in there just as kind of a placeholder in case something came to me. Big surprise. What came to me was the issue that was raised earlier, and that is the concept of civility. I consider all of you very civil people. Not just civic-minded, but civil people. But one of the things that I'm concerned about is inflammatory language. It's difficult to avoid it. It's very difficult to avoid it. And so often we do it without even realizing that we say things with loaded meanings, images. I saw an image of a vacuum cleaner sucking up money. Now, if you want to show me a statistical chart showing me expenditures sent here or there, that's one thing. But to me, an image of a vacuum cleaner sucking up money, that's a loaded image, and I consider it inflammatory. And I would just want us to be sure that we are sifting out the rhetoric from the facts, please. Insofar as Oregon corporations coming into not being a part of this, I disagree that even if a developer is proposing a tenant that is headquartered in another state, I still think the benefits will be to Oregon and to Oregon City. And you know what? There are suppliers in Oregon City. I think that there was testimony from Benchmade Knives. It's going to help Oregon City. Benchmade Knives, from what I can tell, is kind of jonesing for this to come in. And I would be too if they were going to be buying flags or something. The last thing I wanted to mention was a quote that I remember from somewhere. Sorry, I can't source it. I think it was Abraham Lincoln. No. It's actually much more ancient than that. And it says, when the time for action has come, the time for preparedness is past. It's time to stop the paralysis by analysis and begin acting on the information that has already been presented.
I have to generally don't comment. I think we'll have a lot of new, important information will be coming through in the process.
Thank you. My name is Jim Patrick, a resident of Oregon City. I'd like a couple of comments on why I am against the rivers. First of all, I feel that Central Cal, if they're so hot and to trot on this thing, that they should put up the money. The Oregon City residents shouldn't have to put up this money, period. Also, I feel that with 10.6% unemployment, you've got people out of work and a lot of people working on minimum wage jobs that can't afford the extra taxes. I think people like myself on a retired fixed income, we cannot afford the extra taxes. And when I read in the paper that you, Mayor, says that you don't want it to go before the people because it was a dead deal. And that tells me something right there, and I think it should be a vote. And I think also that if this is shoved down our throat, then maybe some recall should be called for. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we could be recalled at the same time. What do you think?
You and I both.
Dan Kniezer and Blaine Meyer.
Stop getting excited, Mr. Fowler.
Dan Kniezer.
Tired yet?
No.
It's only 8:30.
It's only 8:30.
Well, my name is Blaine Meyer, and I'm a long-time resident of Oregon City, a business owner, financial planner, investment advisor. And I just wanted to respond, say a couple of comments. People come to me, they hire me because I am charged with tackling their particular issues, which are typically complicated, and doing due diligence on products and strategies. And so the question as to whether or not we take things to a vote, these are complicated issues on how these investments in a shopping center, how that works, how the taxation works, how they're financed. These are complicated things. And so, to take this to a vote, to me, is really opening it up to political misinformation and people that don't understand. And you boil it down to cliches. We voted for you and gave you the charge of becoming informed on these very complicated issues and giving those, making those things clear and making a vote. And we've been dealing with this for 6 years, and I don't think that there's a need to continue to debate. I think there are some cultural and political underpinnings here that are clear to me. We've got philosophical differences, but I think you're charged with making the decisions based on good due diligence, good fact-finding, and just end it there. But let's get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if we're getting everybody's name as they're coming forward. I think we've done okay. Good.
My name is Dan Niesner, and I live in Oregon City on Holmes Lane. I want to talk for a minute about my opposition to the Rivers project proposal and my support for a ballot measure to allow OC residents to vote on urban renewal proposals. First, I have been to Bridgeport Village, which apparently is a showcase mall for CenterCal. I found it uncomfortably huge and grandiose. I don't ever want to go back there. I don't want that to happen in Oregon City. In other words, I don't want a CenterCal development in Oregon City. Second, I question the validity of the often repeated claim by CenterCal that the Rivers project will create 1,500 permanent jobs. The idea of a parking lot with up to 1,500 cars every day just for the employees is unbelievable. Third and finally, I think the OC voters should weigh in on the Rivers project proposal, either through a ballot measure on urban renewal or a random poll. Therefore, I urge the Commission not to approve the Rivers project proposal, at least until OC voters can make their views known through a ballot measure or through a carefully worded random poll. And that summarizes my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Holliday, Dan Fowler.
Oh my God, here we go again.
Here we go. So I'm Dan Holiday, I live in Oregon City. I guess I really wasn't going to speak tonight, but yeah, well, but a couple of things have been so misstated that we have to talk about them. One, the claims aren't from CenterCal about the 1,500 jobs. We had folks here at the last meeting who testified who came from the employment division, the state employment division, the same guys that, the same place where Tom Potowski comes from. And they confirmed the estimates based on square footage, type of businesses, all of that sort of thing. So this isn't some claim by a developer or, some pie in the sky. These numbers have been confirmed by our own state government. So let's stop talking about that. We talk about the voters voting. Well, in reality, and Mr. Smith kind of asked this question earlier, but in reality, the voters did make a decision about urban renewal. It's just that it happened that there were two candidates who each got a third of the vote that supported urban renewal, and one candidate who got a third of the vote that didn't support it. So, in this case, I think if you looked at the election from a holistic point of view, even though both myself and Daphne West lost the election, we still comprised about 66% of the vote. So, going to a poll, going to a vote, the big reason why we should not vote on urban renewal is the fact that people don't understand it. As can be evinced by tonight, the number of people who have gotten up here and talked about this magic $17 million as if it's sitting in a drawer somewhere and all we have to do is pull it out and buy a park with it. When in fact you must make that value difference between the whatever it's worth, let's say it's worth $12 million today, and the $220 million it'll be worth when it's built out. That's where we get that money from. So until people understand how tax increment financing works and how the urban renewal system works as a whole, there is no hope of having folks, as a general rule, as a general population, because to be honest, most people don't care enough to get informed enough to be able to make a reasonable decision. That's why we elect you folks. That's it for me, thanks.
So I give you 32 seconds.
No, you don't.
No, you don't.
Dan Fowler, Oregon City, and I did sit on the commission for 2 years and 8 years as mayor. I was on an urban renewal commission then for 10 years, 8 years as chair. I want to answer two questions. One about the vote and the other just in general about urban renewal. And my take on the vote, and you've heard it, but maybe some of the audience haven't, is that if we as an urban renewal agency want to do our task of improving blighted areas, then we want to have development occur. I mean, that's why you have an urban renewal agency. If you're going to have development occur, then you need certainty. if you're the developer coming in. The problem that I see with the vote isn't that people can't be educated on the issue, and it isn't that they can't get smart enough on the issue. It's the time lag and the certainty that the development community is going to miss out on. They are not going to wait for those things to happen. So if we're concerned about the change of a blighted area, we need to have certainty, and you, I believe, as elected officials, can sift through those DDAs, those things, and make those calls. So it's that certainty. And then what do you take? Do you take the dollar amount? Do you take the project? And then if it changes, do you go back to the vote? And I can just see all kinds of issues on a vote that, sense seem good, but in reality, it won't work. Urban renewal. I want to try to break it down just a little bit closer. I got a minute and 30 seconds. This is the landfill. It has a value. What really happens before you do an urban renewal district is somebody writes a property tax check in November, and it all goes to all the taxing agencies. When development occurs on that landfill, you have added value. So that little box right there is a shopping center. It's $200 million in value. What really happens now is somebody in November writes a property tax check to the county, just like the rest of us do. But the difference in those two checks is called increment. That's the amount of money that goes to the tax department and comes into the urban renewal agency. It's that money that gets paid then to do projects in urban renewal. If you have no development on the landfill, you have no added check. It does not get written. It is real money. There's a real check that gets written by someone. Right now it's getting written by Scott Parker and Home Depot or whoever their arrangements are. But those checks are being written, being sent in. It's hard to understand, and I hardly understand this part of it, but it's that difference that has to be accounted for and gets spread out on all of our tax statements. Hey, you wonder why is there an urban renewal money on your tax statement? That's it. You're not paying it. You're paying a tax rate of, let's just say, $4 and something a thousand. The year that urban renewal ends, you as a city resident are going to pay the same rate. It does not change because of urban renewal. I know that's hard to kind of get in there, but it doesn't take anything away from you. So I don't know if I've just confused it more, but my time's up. So thank you.
Thank you. And last speaker, Rob Crocker.
I'll keep it quick. All right, again, I took my sticker off because I'm not here to talk about for or against. I see both sides. I truly do. I really do. But I'm just asking of you guys, all of you, please, can we just address when there's misinformation presented in front of you, especially to the public, please just take a moment to address it and say, that's not accurate according to the facts. We need to quit this because all it's doing is muddy the waters. Listen, if you don't like Bridgeport because you don't want to propagate consumerism, that's fine, and that's a valid argument. If you don't want to do Bridgeport because you feel that the land could be used better for industrial development, that's fine. That's a valid argument. If you love landfills and you like going and hanging out on the landfill, that's fine. That's a valid argument. But for people to come up and say that it's costing us, it's our taxpayer dollars that are going to subsidize Cabela's, or our taxes are going to go up because of this development. Those are not true. That's misinformation, and it's misleading people. And what that does is it muddies the water. It riles people up because they're basing their thoughts and decisions on things that aren't true. Let's please, when these things come up, I beg of you, just clarify for everyone so we don't continue to rehash this stuff over and over. Let's get to the facts, okay? Let's talk about the facts. If we don't want to do the rivers, that's fine. If you guys determine that the rivers isn't good for Oregon City, that's fine. But at least let's debate the facts and let's not talk about the misinformation that goes on. And that goes for both sides. If pro or against, it goes for both sides. But let's make sure we stick to the facts. Listen, the other thing I want to say is this development will happen. It may not happen in Oregon City, but from the information that we've got from some of the consultants, Oregon, the Portland metro area, is the second least retailed area in the whole country. okay, in the whole country, second only to Manhattan. And that's a fact. I'm not spreading misinformation, okay? So this will happen. Cabela's will come to this region. It's either going to be in Oregon City, where we can be a part of the process and demand certain things like sustainability, like really good DEQ, like connecting us to downtown, to the main street, like ensuring that we have good corporate citizens. We can either be a part of that process and demand that, or they're going to go somewhere else. They'll go to Wilsonville, they'll go to Clackamas, they'll go to Hillsborough, they'll go somewhere else. It's going to happen. We can either be a part of it and try and find the good in it, or we can let them go. And if we want to let them go, that's fine. Okay, we just need to understand that it's going to happen. So either we take advantage of it or we don't. And if we don't, like I said, that's cool. I'm not here pro or against. But please, I beg of you, if misinformation comes out, just set the record straight. Okay, both for and against. All right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Nacita, I saw you. I think you want to.
I have a question for Mr. Crocker, just about urban renewal. When something new, like a mall, gets built within an urban renewal district, that extra tax increment gets created and is assessed. Does that money belong to the development itself, or does it belong to the urban renewal district as a whole?
It belongs to the urban renewal district as a whole.
Okay.
And that's why the Urban Renewal Commission has to decide: are we willing to reimburse for that development or not? And if you're not, that's totally fine. And we say, look, we're not willing to do that because we want to spend that money on Main Street, or we want to spend that money on the Cove, or we want to spend that money somewhere else. It's not for that development. And as we all know, and thank you for allowing me to clarify that, it is for the Urban Renewal District. And so we have to determine if that's a wise investment. And to spend $17 million to get somebody to spend $220 million to develop a lifestyle center is something that we have to determine.
It's not a question for you, but it's just a comment. I think if we were in the position right here, somebody presents something that is incorrect, and that has happened, and then we try to straighten it up, I think it will be taken as an argument between the citizens and members of the commission. It will not. It won't have a positive effect, and I'll call it in terms of the civility that we are having here. The point is that tax increment, how it's used, and so forth, will be explained in the process. So the misinformation that you're talking about, we will all be informed in the process.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner
Okay. So I'm glad that you ended with that, Rob. Thank you. Good segue. Last night I had an opportunity to go to a meeting to meet with residents, and I believe there was quite a few that had spoke tonight about this project. And it was put forth with a lot of miscommunication, a lot of muddying the water. And I would ask that whoever organizes these meetings, or if there is a commissioner there, that they would clarify things and straighten things out at the moment, instead of getting all of our citizens all riled up, and then we get a lot of angry, miscommunicated people. So, Mr. Nacita, I know that you are part of that organization. I would like for you to make sure that you are the one that clarifies things. There are 3 commissioners that are sitting here today that will have to go to the voters in 2 years to talk about a police facility bond. We are the ones that are going to have to answer and clean up the mess that is being created today. Please do not spread incorrect information. Thank you.
Mayor Neely.
Could I feel very uncomfortable with the comments that have been just been made. Yes, I believe certain commissioners have been perhaps putting forward their opinions on issues and so forth. I think if in fact things are being done in an illegal manner, our city attorney will step forward. I think when you're at a meeting, if you try to clarify something as a commissioner, and you're not really part of that organization, it's probably better to let those corrections be made within the public process, and I think that's what happened. Since you were called out, Mr. Nacita, Commissioner Nacita, do you want to comment?
I will simply say that I spread no misinformation.
I heard that the commissioners. Commissioner Roth, I understand you were at that meeting too.
I was at that meeting also, and I would like to know why Commissioner Mumm didn't straighten things out.
Well,
She was there.
There was three of us there.
But you were asked specifically to straighten some things out, and you declined.
Here's an issue. 3 people were at the meeting, and if the commissioners entered in a dialogue, I think this would have some implications, would they not, Mr. Sullivan?
There was no dialogue.
I'm not going to try to stop you from talking about this stuff.
Okay.
I don't find any legal problems.
Okay. And he doesn't find any legal problems, so I guess, I haven't been organizing any meetings for pro-development or pro-murders or anything else. I personally believe the dialogues that occur at the Urban Renewal Agency will address the misinformation question, and I'm frankly not very concerned about the other meetings that are occurring. I do know a lot of people were organizing the pro group that was coming forward, the pro rivers group. Subsequently, some other people were able to organize a fair number of anti-rivers group, and that's the process that we have here, and that's fine. I have no problem with it. With the decision that was made by the Urban Renewal Agency, we're going to have a debate among ourselves, but we are going to have the correct information presented to us when that occurs. And so I'm not particularly concerned about meetings being held and these kinds of discussions occurring. I think our public comment thing is asked, but if it's just a question, that's okay.
It is just a question. And am I to understand that 3 city commissioners were at this meeting last night?
I just had clarification of the legality.
He was saying that you guys can talk about it now, but under the Oregon open meeting.
I think he was indicating. We'll let the city attorney speak to it. I think he tried to give a general impression about that particular meeting, but I'll let him clarify anything he wishes to clarify.
I'd like to clarify something with you, Dan.
192.
Jim Betty.
I'm sorry.
Jim, Betty, and I were at that meeting. I sat with Betty. Jim was on the other side of the room. I didn't even say hello to him.
If you were discussing city business.
We weren't.
Well, I'm not sure they were. I'm not sure they were making comments, and I'll just let our attorney look up the statute in question.
It is true. We did not discuss it when there was 3 of us there. Okay? That is a true statement. And that is something that we, as this commission, have to do, is be truthful. There was 3 of us there. There was no discussion when there was 3 of us there. That is a true statement.
ORS 192-630 sub 2, a quorum of a governing body may not meet in private for the purpose of deciding on or deliberating towards a decision on any matter except as exempted. I don't think you joined for that purpose. You happened to be at the same place. If you had, then there would be a problem.
I know that I was there just to collect the information. I felt that was what Kathy was there for, too.
And this came up before when the previous mayor excused me from a meeting because I was a third person, and I left at that time. Indicated the mayor I was very angry about it because I didn't think she had any authority to do so. And I clarified with the attorney that was representing the city at that meeting, which was not Ed Sullivan, that in fact I had every right to be at that meeting. So as long as we're not deliberating in private among the 3 of us to actually direct how the city procedure is going to go, that's the issue, I guess. So I think we've discussed this long enough. I will entertain a motion to, I believe, probably withdraw this resolution before us because, and I'll have a comment after the motion is acted upon, because the actions were taken by the Urban Renewal Agency. Do I have a motion to withdraw the item?
I move to pull resolution number 11-05.
Second?
Second.
I heard Okay, Commissioner Nocita seconded. Can I have a call for the roll, please? For the vote.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Mum?
Aye.
Commissioner Rock?
Aye.
Mayor Neely?
Aye. The comment I had made is I actually put forward this resolution. I worked with staff in terms of the whereases. A couple of them I wasn't that comfortable about. But the purpose of this was to get this thing moving. And I think it was successful. I think the Urban Renewal Agency then made a vote to then, well, I think they did make a vote to invite the Senator Cal to come forward. That happened. I'm very pleased with the decision, and I will vote on, well, I did vote on the affirmative. So that's it. Thank you. Under the general business, we have the business license examination, cigarette cheaper, and I'm going to let, I guess it's Lieutenant Jim Band is going to make this presentation on this particular item. Should be an interesting one.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. It's kind of like going to court. I've got, I know there's some information that you already have about why I'm coming to talk to you about this. I kind of will just kind of paraphrase some of it and go over the timeline of what happened, explain to you why we're here bringing it to you, and then maybe talk about some possible recommendations or fixes. So we found out, because basically some angry parents who, one woman in particular, her son had been cited for having tobacco. So the mother, understandably, was upset because she also wanted to know, where did my son get this tobacco? And the son said that it was from this Cigarettes Cheaper. So as our school resource officer, Dave Edwin, started looking into the problem, what he started learning was this seemed to be kind of something that several students were aware that they could buy tobacco from Cigarettes Cheaper. So on the 29th of December, we did a sting. Several officers were involved in that, and they sent a kid who was underage in with some of our money in an attempt to see, will they be able to buy tobacco, which they were. As a result of that, the clerk, Tri Trin, who's actually here today, who's also the business owner, was cited for doing this. He was given a citation for $890 to the municipal court, and on January 14th went and paid that fine. So 2 days before paying that fine, so this is after he'd already been cited, one of our sergeants caught some kids with tobacco, cigarettes, and said that they had purchased these cigarettes from Cigarettes Cheaper. So this is after the sting, about 2 weeks after the sting, 2 days before the court appearance where he paid his citation. And then, exactly 1 week after Mr. Trent paid the citation, he went to our Oregon City school resource officer, again found a student in possession of chewing tobacco this time, who said that he had bought that the day before at Cigarettes Cheaper. So kind of the background as we looked into this was, at least that kid, there were 8 transactions just on his debit history from Cigarettes Cheaper. A side note that I had just heard recently was that when we were trying to find the kid to go in to do the sting, one of our sergeants talked to a neighbor kid who was 17 about possibly doing this, and he said, I can't. I've been going in there and buying cigarettes, honestly, since I was 14, so I'm probably not the guy to do that. So we see this as kind of a big problem. At least a half a dozen kids were talked to, confirming these stories that they had purchased, that their friends had purchased. We talked to some parents who corroborated that they had found out that their kids had been buying cigarettes at Cigarettes Cheaper. And I know that you were also included in your little piece on this, that there were some email conversation between one of our sergeants and Mr. Trin. So normally we don't come before you with something like this, but the problem was, as we end up looking at the rules from the city, our job really in matters like this is to correct somebody's behavior. Now, in a traffic matter, if you stop somebody for speeding, sometimes officers feel like they can amend somebody's behavior with a warning. Sometimes it takes a ticket. But the end game is getting them to change their behavior. And that was the point of the sting, the point of the citation, the point of the fine with the owner of Cigarettes Cheaper, is changing their behavior so they understand, man, I don't want to be selling tobacco to teenagers. What really troubled us is that after the sting, we have at least 2 times that we're aware of that tobacco was still sold. And so it's just disturbing that even after police intervention, after paying a fine for $900, we can nail down at least 2 times that it was still sold from the store. So we're kind of left with parents who are still saying, what are you guys doing? And we feel like we have to answer, understandably, what are we doing to make sure that the kids are safe? And this store happens to be, I don't know, a minute from the high school. So that's kind of why we're here. I will say that I spoke to Tree Trin, who's here. He and his brother run the store, and I think from talking to him that he wants to do the right thing. I think he just kind of is a little overwhelmed with the store and how to do the right thing. As I look at what the rules say are supposed to happen here, that it's a quasi-judicial proceeding, basically that we would be recommending that you guys had to determine whether or not they should keep a license, whether or not the license should be suspended or revoked. Now, if there's an alternative, we're not married to that, or if there's another solution that is not as structured that you would direct us to do, we will do that. We're not married to any one idea, but it is serious enough, and I think that they need to understand, and our community needs to know that when our kids are being sold tobacco and alcohol too from this same store, that and somebody's not listening to the initial enforcement action, we've got to do something more. So, you have any questions?
I would have the attorney, and I saw him raise his hand. I've never seen this request before us, and not. I mean, this one. This is the first time I've ever seen the notion of a.
I've been city attorney for 25 years. This is the first one.
Okay.
The only thing before you is whether or not you find sufficient grounds for a hearing and whether you want to proceed to a hearing.
So we're not holding the hearing now, we're just making...
You would be calling a hearing, but it would be at a future date.
And we take public testimony here to that effect?
You could if you want to tonight.
It's saying that... Okay. The will of the commission, I would suggest we go ahead with the public hearing before we make a decision as to whether a hearing among the people that are here, not a public hearing that's being requested here, and then make a decision as to whether we want to go to a public hearing to revoke the license. Commissioner Nocita.
I want to share that I and I think other commissioners over the past 6 months or a year have at least received, in my case, at least 2 emails, I think from the same citizen, however, regarding this store. I think aside from the concerns that have arisen pursuant to the police investigation. So it seems that there's enough circumstantial evidence of concern of what's going on there to merit an exam. So I'd support it.
Well, I guess you can ask if there's any.
Well, I guess my question is, does everyone want to proceed with a public hearing now to get input from the public? I get a affirmative nod?
I'd like to make a comment after that.
Sure. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I say something?
Yes.
According to our municipal code, in order to have a public hearing to determine whether or not we're going to suspend or revoke the business license, The city recorder has to send a notice of that by certified mail.
I don't think you're talking about a hearing, whether to hold a hearing.
Right.
Is what I understand.
Yes, that's the intent. We're not making a decision at this point.
Just public comment.
Just public comment.
Yep.
And I still get nods to proceed with that. Do you want to make a comment ahead of
yeah.
that?
Well, I don't know if there's anyone here.
Is there anybody wishing to speak to this particular issue?
Yes.
Seeing none, do I have a motion to go to a public hearing to determine whether to suspend or revoke a business license?
I'd like to make my comment, right?
Yes, okay.
All right, thanks. What? Well, I work at Oregon City High School, and I had a conversation just briefly with our school resource officer. I remember this coming out there was an article not too long ago, well, a couple articles, but the first article that came out in the newspaper, it was kind of when I, well, in the emails too, but took notice of it. And the article itself spurred discussion at the high school, in which I heard my own students talking about how easy it was, or so it says in the commission report. The police learned through their investigation that several other kids were purchasing tobacco from cigarettes cheaper. It was essentially known at Oregon City High School that kids could buy there without identification being checked. I believe that's, from my feeling, from what I'm hearing from students, that statement's true from the staff. But so I have a lot of concern about it. I definitely think we should, hear from the public on that topic. I guess in terms of, the first thought that crossed my mind is this is something that's happened multiple times. So there's definitely been some warnings. And to me, I could kind of understand the time it might take to change a former practice, but only in the case of maybe a store that's selling lots of different things, or has lots of employees, where it's a little less easy to control. But when you're only selling cigarettes and alcohol, you check every person, or you check every person that's of a certain age. It's not like someone's throwing a pack of cigarettes in with bananas and a soft drink or whatever. So it seems to me that it should be something that could be fixed pretty quick, and if it's not, we need to deal with it. So I think I'm anxious to hear what the citizens think on it, but I have a huge concern.
Do you have any citizens' comments? If none, does someone wish to put forward a motion to put this to a public hearing?
May I suggest a date? If you're, I'm suggesting March 16th. I have checked with the manager and the recorder.
You wish to speak?
Yeah, might as well.
Okay, come ahead.
My name is Kim Grenfell. I'm an Oregon City resident, and I have two children who aren't yet at the high school, but will be in the next couple of years. So to hear this information is awfully concerning, and I certainly hope that if this is the process that needs to happen to revoke a business license, that we would do that. It seems pretty clear and clean cut, so please do so.
Mr. Mayor, again, this is going to be a quasi-judicial proceeding. Right. You need to keep an open mind on this, and you'll have to talk about any ex-parte contacts.
Okay. With that, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
And specifically, you're talking about having a public hearing to determine whether the business license of cigarette cheapers should be suspended or revoked, and that that public hearing would be on March 16th. Is that right?
So moved.
Second? I'll second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had a question. Is that the proceeding? I mean, is that what we do next?
Yes.
Okay.
Call for the vote?
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Mom?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Mayor Neely?
Aye. 5 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Okay. I believe now we are going to the consent agenda. And we've had 2 items pulled. Again, they are, and we've got several handouts of several items, so I got a little confused. But the items that are pulled again are 8A, is that correct?
Yeah.
And what was the other?
8F.
And 8F.
And 8.
Oh, 8B and 8F.
B and F.
D and F, thank you. I had 8A on the top there. D and F. Okay, Commissioner Nocita, I believe you requested 8D.
Wait a minute.
Oh, wait, let's pass the, excuse me, we're going to pass the consent agenda minus 8D and 8F. Do I have a motion to do so?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
The vote, please.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Mom?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Mayor Neely?
Aye. Then item 8D, Commissioner Nocita.
I had some proposed amendments that are very brief to the proposed rules for the City Commission, and they go to the concern I've expressed in the past about how the agenda is set, and this just comes from the experience I've had over the past couple of years sitting on the commission, and I want to broaden the agenda setting process to all of the commissioners proactively, and not put any individual commissioner in a spot where not having been consulted is presented with an agenda item that's concerning, but that commissioner has not had an opportunity to participate in how that agenda item got on the agenda. So I will walk folks through my proposed amendments. The commission is certainly able to accept or reject them as it wishes, and it's on page 6 under section 5, agenda and order of the business.
Okay. We are talking about 8B. Okay, excuse me. Go ahead.
Okay, if you return to the text of the proposed rules, I'm talking about page 6 of the draft.
Yes.
And I'm talking about section 5, paragraph A, agenda. It reads, the City Commission agenda is the official order of business at City Commission meetings. The agenda, the first edit I would propose is, the agenda shall be prepared by the city manager. The current language reads, in consultation with the mayor. I would change the last 2 words to say, in consultation with each commissioner. The text reads, the agenda shall be a listing by topics, subjects to be considered by commission at any meeting. Items are placed on the agenda by consensus of the majority of the commission or recommended by the city manager. I would delete the following sentence that says the mayor may change the order of business or add or delete items on the agenda. Because I think if the city manager has consulted with each commissioner, 1 or 2 commissioners have expressed a definite interest in a particular agenda item, I don't think the mayor should have the power to delete that item from the agenda that other commissioners have expressed an interest in putting on the agenda. So those are the 2 edits I would propose for this paragraph that would make these acceptable to me.
I have no problem, save one. The city manager isn't here to speak to each commissioner, but that's not my major concern. I guess I would prefer to hold this to a meeting where the city manager could actually call.
Fine with that.
The thing is, the mayor may change the order of the business is within the charter. The mayor does have a charter capability of changing the order of the agenda. But you're quite right, the other items are not specified in the charter.
Okay, so you would not have a problem, Mr. Mayor, since this relates to your power?
No, not at all.
Deleting that
I just
second
think the
clause.
one item, and the city attorney will probably check that, but I do believe the charter says I can change the order of the agenda, which doesn't give me much power at all, but anyway. Yeah.
So can I-
Hope I can get you tired by putting the one I'm most concerned with.
Just keep switching.
But other than that, no, I have no problem with that.
So am I understanding correctly that we're deleting the part that says or add or delete?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're going to hold it over, and the only reason I'm holding it over is because we're talking about really the time capability of putting an agenda together by the city manager. If that becomes an issue, I think we can just cross out and consult the mayor. But I would like the city manager to be able to comment on this, and if you were to make a motion, I guess would be hold it over so the city manager could. Would you be willing to do that?
Move to continue agenda item 8B to the next city commission meeting where the city manager is in attendance.
And I will second that.
Sorry.
I get to do that. I get to second.
Okay, you can second.
Can I ask a question? Is there any other comments or questions on this?
Oh, well, that's a good question.
So then it gets all addressed at the
Yeah.
same time?
Do the commissioners have any other comments on this particular agenda item?
I do.
Okay, Commissioner Roth?
I have one, but it may be answered by this, talking about work sessions and saying that, let's see, last section of page 4, section C, under work sessions. It says, "The agenda for the work session shall be prepared by the city manager based on either of the following." Is that really either of the following or any of the following? And then all items deemed appropriate by the city manager. Is that clarifying that the items can only be appropriated by the city manager, or deemed appropriate by the city manager? I don't.
That's good.
Can we address this when we have the city manager?
Yes.
I thought we should probably just get it all out.
No, I think that's fine. Let's get it all out, and so we know what will be presented at the next meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Did you have any?
Oh, well, I was just going to comment on the recommendations from Commissioner Nocita. If the mayor has no problem with it, I guess I don't have a problem with it either, but I was just looking at, the majority of the commission drives the city manager, and so if the city manager is not bringing things forward to the mayor for the agenda, then that's a problem. So I wouldn't imagine that, then that just means the city manager's not doing his job. If that's the case, then the city commission takes care of it. So I don't really see a problem with the way it's worded as it is.
Okay, and so we'll be
discuss
discussing that
Yeah,
at the
that's
next
fine.
meeting. So-
Well, I don't mean to be excluding the mayor in that.
Right. Okay.
And maybe saying the mayor and each commissioner would be more of a better clarification. So, but we can talk about that with the manager.
City recorder has a comment?
Just a comment logistically about that statement. The agenda shall be prepared by the city manager in consultation with the mayor and each commissioner.
What does that mean?
How are you thinking that would play out? I mean,
Well-
are you asking that we consult each of you before we put any agenda item on the agenda? Or, I guess maybe...
Mr. Mayor, can I also just add, I think that's my recommendation to you, but you already got there before I was even said so, was I really think Mr. Frazier should participate in this conversation.
Yes.
Because it's a working matter between the city manager and his elected board. So I don't know if I would suggest that you get into much debate about that tonight, just simply for the fact that he's not here to talk to you about that. And I think it's really important that he would be, just suggesting.
So have we moved and seconded?
Yes.
Yes.
And now we can call for the vote.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Baum?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Mayor Neely?
Aye. Then I think what we had here on 8F was a edit that the city recorder has placed into 8F. So, Zaid?
Yes, during citizen comments on February 2nd, the microphone failed at one little point of one of the citizens' comments, and you have the revised minutes there with Tim Powell's addition into the minutes for item 8F. And that was the only change, was the addition of his comments.
In this stack?
Yeah.
During the meeting, he was reading off of a document.
And so this was his written document?
Correct. Well, it was a summary of...
Yeah.
Is this by any chance the matter that Mr. Hamilton was concerned about, or is this something different?
I don't know what Mr. Hamilton was concerned about.
I personally have no problem with it. So, does somebody want to move item 8F?
So moved.
Second? Anybody second, I mean?
Second.
Call for the vote, please.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Mom?
Aye.
Commissioner Rock?
Aye.
Mayor Neely?
Aye.
City manager's report should be short.
The city manager's report should be short. That's what Commissioner. But you have full reign. You can talk for as long as you want to, Mr. Archer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will try to exercise good judgment. I have two items for you, and the first is I'd like to call on Claire Matt, one of our program staff here at the Pioneer Center, to give you some information about the upcoming March for Meals program.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Claire Met, and I live in Oregon City. I come before you this evening as the Program Assistant for the Pioneer Adult Community Center. The month of March is March for Meals, which is an annual national campaign to heighten awareness of the problem of senior hunger and to work locally to alleviate it. In 2010, our Meals on Wheels program here at the center provided nearly 29,000 meals to homebound seniors and disabled residents here in Oregon City. In 2009, just under 26,000 meals were delivered. That's an increase of 3,000 in 1 year. We have one of the largest Meals on Wheels route areas in Clackamas County, which includes Beaver Creek, Caris, and West Lynn. We have a dedicated crew of Meals on Wheels drivers who use their own vehicles to deliver a warm meal with a little companionship to our seniors Monday through Friday. Pioneer Center volunteers worked over 14,000 hours in 2010. In addition to our Meals on Wheels program, we also serve a congregate meal at the center Monday through Friday. In 2009, we served 8,500 meals, and in 2010, it had increased by 1,500 to just under 10,000 meals. We serve one of the largest noontime congregate meals in Clackamas County, as well as having one of the largest transportation areas that we service. The numbers continue to rise as baby boomers, numbering 76 million, age and government funding keeps getting cut, so these numbers are not going to get any better. We are working hard to close the gap between our cost of $4 per meal and what we receive in donations, which averages just under $1. The Pioneer Center does a lot of fundraising throughout the year to help bridge this gap. But the March for Meals campaign brings direct focus on the great and ever-increasing need of senior hunger. We're kicking off our March for Meals campaign tomorrow night here at the Pioneer Center. We are hosting the Chamber After Hours to give Chamber members and others a chance to see the nuts and bolts of how Meals on Wheels operates. We will also be recognizing our Cover the Miles sponsors who help provide a mileage reimbursement for our Meals on Wheels drivers. The 2011 campaign is centered around plastic donation containers that will be distributed to businesses and churches in Oregon City and West Lynn. They have a distinctive sticker on them. I got one here, with a marching drummer. And then there's informational statistics. This is nationally and then locally, what Meals on Wheels and a typical person that would get it. I encourage everyone to watch for them and to be generous in your donations. Please contact me at the Pioneer Community Center if your business or church, and I'm talking to the population now, would be interested in having a donation container during the month of March to help us as we work to end senior hunger. Please remember that your small change can make a big change in a local senior's life.
Thank you. Can you please repeat the date and the time of the event?
It is tomorrow night, the 17th, from 5:30 to 7:30 here. And you're going to be speaking about Mayors for Meals, which is a facet of the March for Meals. Shirley Ryan, our Meals on Wheels director, anyway, she's in charge of it, will kind of have a layout of how, the meals go out. And we have also given you an invitation to join, come to the Senior Center on March 16th to, I gave it to Nancy. I don't know if she... They have it. Okay.
Yeah, we have an invitation.
No, it's actually the... I don't have a copy of it, but it is basically, we're inviting you on March 16th to come and have a presentation about the Meals on Wheels program, and actually to go out and ride along with the drivers so that you can kind of see what it's all about, because it makes a really big difference in a lot of people's lives.
Ms. Smith has given my scripted a speech that I'm supposed to give tomorrow night. So if any of you can't make it and want to read the speech, you're welcome to do so. Yes.
Thanks, Claire. One more item I have for you. You should have at your places, should have received a memo from our city attorney's office regarding bonds and indebtedness. And I'd like to ask Mr. Sullivan to give you a quick summary of that.
This is just an introduction for you to read and then for me to respond to questions at another time. It's late. The city manager mentioned to you at your last meeting that I would be giving a report dealing with limitations on capital financing. This is a big issue at a fairly late hour, but you have a constellation of two charter provisions, one state constitutional provision, and a set of statutes, all of which together limit your powers to finance. If you look at the bottom of page 1 of the memo, there is a charter provision on debt limitation, which prohibits a floating indebtedness of $25,000. That's not a big issue because the way a similar provision has been interpreted by the Oregon Supreme Court, as you'll see in page 2, just below the middle, is that your assets have to exceed or can't be exceeded by debts over $25,000. We have more than enough assets, really, to take care of that. More of a concern is the Section 57 of the Charter, bottom of page 2, going over to page 3. This was the addition of to the normal requirement that any general obligation bond go to the voters. The voters added about 10 years ago a provision that revenue bonds, which would normally something that the City Commission handled on its own, would also have to go out to the voters. So our charter requires both general obligation or GO bonds and revenue bonds to go out to the voters. That will probably hamper us if we try to do a lease purchase of property. So you need to know that, and I'd like you to have a look at it and then let me know if there's a problem. On page 3, again about halfway through the page, there's a definition of bond. And bond really, this was amended into the statutes in the mid part of the last decade, means any written indebtedness. And bonds normally now mean anything where you have a written indebtedness of over a year. that you're not funding in the present budget cycle. That there have been many creative lawyer ways of trying to get around that, but they've not been very successful. On page 4, if you look at Martin versus Oregon Building Authority, the state legislature tried to create a separate entity called the Oregon Building Authority. They would do the debt, and that was a way of trying to get around the state constitution's debt limitation for states. And I didn't put it in the memo, but the justice who wrote the opinion said this was a device that would fool only a lawyer. Because it was clearly made to evade the state debt limitation. So I want you to be aware of that. So there are other ways of doing it. Most of them entail going to the voters. So if you'd look it over, if you want to put it on either a work session or a regular session agenda, I'll be happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Do we have reports from members of the commission? I'll take Commissioner Smith first.
I'll just mention we had our South Fork Water Board meeting, and I will be serving as the vice chair of South Fork Water for this year, and also as the alternate for the Regional Water Consortium. What else happened?
It was a rather simple agenda.
It was a very quick agenda. It was our first agenda, or first meeting of the year. The other announcement I wanted to make was there's some meetings happening with the Oregon City Tourism Council, and we'll be bringing a proposal forward. I was kind of determined. I'm going to talk to Commissioner Mumm as well. We've kind of been designated as creating a proposal to bring, as a plan to bring the Oregon City Tourism Council. Oh my gosh, it's late. It's not late. I'm just tired. And the Arts Commission. So those two community groups, we've kind of discussed our goals session, how to bring some of those back. So when the Oregon City Tourism Council meets, that whole group will be a group that will help, I think, focus that proposal that I'll bring to the City Commission after that. I also wanted to make an announcement about the upcoming play at Oregon City High School, which is actually in the Black Box Theater. It is student-directed scenes. It's one of my favorite things in the year. Student-directed scenes of movies that were made out based on plays. And so it's called Movie Night, and it's February 24th through the 26th, and March 3rd through the 5th at Oregon City High School. Well, that's it.
Very good.
Commissioner Nocita.
I have one item, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to share my experience this morning in my neighborhood and call out and commend two of my neighbors in the McLaughlin neighborhood. As has been reported on the news this afternoon and this morning, one of our neighbors, an elderly lady at the corner of First and Center near the Public Works building, was severely burned in a house fire. And I understand from when I was there talking with folks that her power had been shut off, and it may have been a case of trying to keep warm with no power. But this woman's house started on fire, and two of her neighbors, Dennis Bryce Yaws and Warren Douglas Stoker, rescued her from the house. They actually went into the flames and extracted her from the house. By the time I had gotten there, the elderly lady was sitting on a curb with several people around her supporting her, and the paramedic unit coming to pick her up and take her to the hospital. And I want to wish our neighbor Godspeed and her recovery, which I hope is quick. But she was severely burned, and I guess we'll get a report on her condition later. And I also want to, again, commend these two gentlemen and hope that we can arrange some kind of formal recognition as a city for one of the true acts of heroism that I've witnessed in my lifetime, because they placed themselves in great danger to save this lady and did not hesitate to do it. So I was really touched by that today.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a report?
Do you want to say anything about the Main Street?
Go ahead and say if there was a meeting. Or...
There was a meeting. Mostly we discussed downtown residential development and also the Economic Improvement District coming to an end unless there's some resolution found quickly. And was it April 15th would be Lloyd's last day unless the resolution's found?
I believe that's right.
I had a question. We all received the email about the Atkins Church request, and I had emailed and asked some questions. How do I get answers to my questions?
You sent an email to Mr. Sullivan?
No, I just sent back to the commissioners and whoever was there. Does it go to you?
Well,
I would guess other questions.
I mean, I just wanted to know kind of what's the purpose of it, and are we going to, is the taxpayers paying the $3,859, or, I mean, I just didn't quite get how the whole process worked. So I just kind of wanted the information.
I think that's a discussion that needs to wait till the city manager returns, because the city manager was integral to the decision-making process for that.
Okay.
all right. Any other reports? I would have one, but I see we have a representative from the Oregon City Chamber of Commerce, and might want to make an announcement about a meeting that you sponsor on Friday at 11:30. Or Amber, would you care to do so? A little bit more convenient for you to do it than for me to do it. Such a sure event.
Doug, you have a way with just making me come up here whether I'm ready for it.
I was trying to
or
get
not.
Karen to come up here. She passed it to you.
Shall I introduce myself?
Yeah, we can.
Amber Holbeck, representing the Oregon City Chamber of Commerce. And if you were not already aware, this Friday, Mayor Doug Neely will present his very first State of the City address. And it will be recorded for our citizens to be able to see. We're very much looking forward to being able to host that event for the community as a whole. And so pleased that our mayor is willing to come to the table and to share with all of us what the city's plans are for 2011. So thank you. Pacific Crest Grand Ballroom will be in downtown Oregon City, 11:30 start time, and we're really full. Not to make you nervous, Doug, but looks like a full house.
How many people do you think will watch it? A lot? Like, even like
You know,
hundreds
I know
of
people
thousands?
that watch city commission meetings and special presentations over and over and over again.
And you might mention where the Pacific Crest Ballroom is.
Well, the Pacific Crest Grand Ballroom is in downtown Oregon City on the 3rd floor of the Elks Lodge.
Thank you.
And any questions, call the chamber, 656-1619. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Doug.
Thank you. Hearing no more reports, everybody's dismissed.
Do you know what we're going to get done?
What?
Do you know what we're going to get done in 2011?
Huh?
Do you know what we're going to get done in 2011?
I did. I'm saying no such thing.
I hope someone
will
knows
be
what we're
talking.
doing.
I will talk what happened in 2010.
That makes
And there will be a slight